So Chile can make a correction on that slide.
Hello, everybody. My name is Amy Robbins. I'm the Communications Director. Wanted to go ahead and welcome everyone to the call. This is our first ever executive call. We will be first we're going to do some speaking roles from our executives, and then we'll move into some questions at the end. On the call today, we will have Captain Casey Murray, our president, Captain Michael Santoro, vice president, and Captain Tom McCoy, who is our second vice president. All three of them will be on the call, and we'll give some opening remarks, and then we will move into the question and answer section. We've gotten several questions already that we will probably lead off with. And then after that, toward the end of the call, we will take all of your questions that are in the little Q&A on the side. So if you have any questions, please feel free to type those in there, and we will get those answered toward the end of the call. And with that, let's go ahead and hand it over to Casey Murray.
Thanks, Amy, and thanks everybody for joining us. Appreciate you being here and letting us share some of what's going on at SWAPA and address any concerns that everybody has out there online. I want to hit a couple items before we get started, just on what we're doing here at Empire Central. When I came in, I had a couple very important sort of, the things that I wanted to work on and saw us, I don't want to say lacking, but could show some improvement. The first is the SWAPA finances. I came in and wanted to provide some better visibility with where our finances are for the membership. We comply with all DOL rules and never had an issue there. We get audited yearly, and those have always been fine. But to provide the membership with a better visibility of what's going on and where your money's going. So we have started a strategic plan and have put in place a strategic plan. And one of the focuses is on the budgetary process. We want to see more line items and where that money is actually going. So that as we look at it in the future, we'll get back to a balanced budget. And that's one of our main strategic initiatives moving forward. Part of that process was bringing in and standing up the internal audit committee. The board approved that and named Hank Ketchum as chair. And Hank has already started diving in really, really deeply. And any of y'all that know Hank understand what his forensic accounting is like. So we're looking at processes, and it's something that for the last decade or so we really haven't done. This is going to be in conjunction with a policy manual rewrite as well as a staff policy manual rewrite here. So again, the idea is sort of looking at us as a $24 million corporation and running it that way. So that's one of the big initiatives we have. The second one that is big is customer service. That is what we do on a daily basis, is support all of you that are out there flying the line every day. We also support your family through benefits, through a lot of the pilot services group, whether it's Lyft, whether it's SISM. And you're going to see over the next 6 months a concerted effort in communication to sort of reinforce that and make sure everybody knows who to call. And I've said it many times before. I want to say it again. I want it to be where, your family, if your daughter falls off a bike, the first thought is to call SWAPA. And so whether it's our benefits team, whether you're having issues at home, or whether you just need a scheduling question answered, and or contract admin, SRC, or just one of us. So you're going to see a push towards that. And of course, I think what's on everybody's mind is negotiations. We are have met last month, met again this month, and we're going to continue a regular cadence of that negotiations with the company. We're pushing for more dates with the company. We think that twice a month is where we need to be meeting. So a week on, week off of negotiations. And that's been the cadence for years. It's the way most organizations do it. And we're really pushing the company to provide us more dates for negotiations. We spent 3 years preparing for this. It was open. The company saw all of our communications. Plus, they've had the rewrite for almost a year and a half now, since January of 2020. So part of what last year, allowed us to do was sort of stress test our new language. And we feel very strongly that it held up very well to a lot of the oddities that occurred during COVID. Things like hindsight, things that we didn't foresee, but yet the language was written to account for those. And we feel very strongly that not only does the new CBA language support you, but it also supports the company in providing guidance and information on how these scheduling anomalies, as they occur, how they should be handled. So we want to get back. We want to, more meetings, and this will be a marathon. We've got to get through the language. There are many new systems that have been put in place that we would like to see the company test. And so as we start moving forward, and as we have more meetings, you'll of course follow right along with us. A couple things that have come up recently are vaccination and masks. There's a push. We've all seen where Delta's at with requiring new hires to be vaccinated. We came out many months ago, and it remains just as strong today that vaccination should be a pilot's choice. And we're going to continue to push for that. There are many different reasons why someone wants to or doesn't want to be vaccinated, and it is a personal choice. It could be your beliefs, it could be your concerns as to why you choose not to get vaccinated, and we will absolutely support the pilot's decision, and it should be the pilot's decision whether or not to get vaccinated. The other thing that's getting a lot of traction is masks. There's new CDC guidance out, and the current mask requirement through TSA and through the actual FAA of the mask requirements through September. We actually have a call today at 4 p.m. with the FAA to see if they're going to reevaluate that. But as it stands right now, the mask mandate will remain for airline passengers, airline crews in the airport as it is. But we're hoping that they reevaluate that, and that's going to be our push today when we talk. One other quick thing before I close it out and turn it over to Captain Santoro. The Fair and Open Skies Act was dropped last week. We've pushed for that for a while now. We actually had Congresswoman Van Dyne in the building that day. She is a member of the House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure and part of the Aviation Subcommittee. And so we relayed, our support for that bill as it limits the flag of convenience carriers. And they are going through an evolution. They are a threat. And as they evolve, I think they're probably a bigger threat. And it's a threat to domestic aviation. It's a threat to all of our careers. So we were happy when DeFazio dropped the bill late that afternoon, the same day that she was here at SWAPA. So we hope to see it get traction, and we believe it will. So that's all I got right now. We'll get to the questions here in a minute, but I want to turn it over to Mike.
Thanks, Casey. Appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Do appreciate you coming on the call here in this new virtual world. It's kind of nice to get to do this with you all. As you know, I've been the COVID guy for over a year now. So I'll give you a quick COVID update. Fortunately, the call volume has gone down drastically over the last month or so, which is really good news. It pretty much trends with the United States, cases. So all in all, our cases are pretty low, and hopefully that continues and actually turns out zero soon. One of the good things that's recently come out not too long ago was that there's no need for international quarantining. So feel free to go on vacation this year wherever you want. And when you come back, you don't have to worry about sitting out for 10 to 14 days. So you're good to go as soon as you land back in the good old USA. So no international quarantining. Vaccines, like Casey said, are still optional. We will absolutely fight tooth and nail if they change their minds on that. But we believe here at SWAPA that it is a pilot's choice whether to get vaccinated or not, and we'll continue to push that effort. So far, no indications from the company that does present a big problem for them legally, and just trying to navigate the reasoning behind it, religious reasons for people not wanting it or other health reasons. It just has to be a nightmare for them. So I would be surprised if they did come back and mandate it, but we'll keep track of that for sure and stay on top of it and let you know if anything does change in that area. So on the vaccine front, if you are vaccinated, you get 90 days. Right now, the CDC guidance, and that's what Southwest is following, 90 days free of any COVID pulls. So you're considered fully vaccinated 14 days after your second shot, or 14 days after your first single Johnson & Johnson shot. So start the clock at that point, and you're good for 90 days. So if anybody calls you, chief pilot, the office at the GO that is calling and notifying everybody of close contacts or family member close contact, you are free of any kind of pulls for 90 days. Hopefully they'll reevaluate that and make it a bit longer. It just seems a little short for me since the vaccine is supposed to last longer than 3 months, but that's where it is right now. That also applies if you have gotten COVID and recovered. It's 90 days from the day you tested for COVID for free of pulls. So that's kind of the standing policy right now. One thing that I found out not too long ago, actually like 2 weeks ago, was that the company's asking pilots now if they've been vaccinated, which has kind of caused a little bit of concern for a majority of pilots out there with reason. So initially I thought, well, they're just asking asking if they're vaccinated to see if they're in the 90-day window, do they need to be pulled or not? And so I didn't think that was a big deal at first. And then I found out that there was a couple cases where no close contact was determined, and then they asked if they'd been vaccinated. So obviously they're trying to fish and want to know, have you been vaccinated or not? They just want to check that box. So because Southwest does not mandate vaccinations, you're not required to answer that question. So if you choose not to answer the question, that's totally okay. Just say, I prefer not to answer that question, and they can't force you into answering it. So if you're not comfortable giving out the information, then you don't have to. So just a FYI on that front. Pro standards, I'm going to switch gears here a little bit. Pro standards is our calls volume is up. It's kind of off the charts right now. A lot of it has to do with masks, and it has to do with masks, flight attendants in the back, pilots in the front, walking through the terminal. And so just be cognizant. The rule is in place. It's frustrating. We know it. I don't like wearing it, but until that changes, we got to kind of press with the mask. Also, kind of be respectful when you are criticizing or giving corrections. Evidently, there's some hurt feelings out there, and it's not maybe just the stress of the whole mask thing and whole COVID thing. People are getting upset a little sooner than normal. But absolutely want you to use pro standards. That's your first call to make if you have any issues with the person you're flying with, or even if flight attendants in the back, if something comes up, our pro standards will talk to their pro standards and get that worked out. So again, for pro standards is your number one spot. That kind of leads me up to what we're looking into as a program here. We're looking into something called, we call it Charm School. And it's actually the reason why I'm broadcasting here at home. I just got back from our first site visit where we're looking at sending pilots that have trouble communicating nicely let's put it that way. We're just gonna think about looking to send them to a place to, or person really, to get some training on how to effectively communicate in a nice way. Let's put it that way. So we just got done site visit 1 out of 3, and then we're going to choose one of the best ones, and we will give you more information as that lays out. I think that's about all I have for an update on my end, and I'll throw it to Captain Nicoy for our second VP.
Hey, thanks, Mike, and thanks, Casey. Thanks, everybody, for being on. I don't have that much. I'm just going to update you on our finances. I'm going to write an RP for kind of a mid-year financial update here the next couple of weeks, but I'm going to touch on some of the important stuff here. The reserve fund as of yesterday is really healthy, sitting at about just north of $25 million. A lot of it is due to the market. Obviously, guys, everybody's been watching the market kind of balloon and do really well. Some of it was planned as we reshuffled our investment strategy on the reserve fund last fall. You might have seen it on the resolutions, which gave us a really strong cash position coming out of last year, available cash position should we need to access it. On the reserve fund front, the last year, the surplus ended up being about $1.3 million. We sent that out when we did the financial update a couple of months back. But the reason I mentioned that is, you know, we passed a deficit budget back in September of 2020. We had a dues shortfall because of the VSP and the multiple exto programs of roughly about $2.4 million. And so the membership, approved a deficit budget, and that deficit budget was just so we had the strategic ability to dip into the reserve fund if we needed to for prolonged negotiations, IT upgrades, or whatever the case might be. At the end of last year, we ended up with a $1.3 million surplus, and the BOD voted to put that back into the reserve fund. So you'll see that going back to the reserve fund for equal payments over the course of 2021. So that's good news. Spending so far year to date is down, actually, mostly because the communities are trending down. Still not a lot of travel, not any conferences. The country's still kind of shut down when it comes to stuff like that. So that's good news. Casey mentioned the Internal Audit Committee, and those of you that know Hank and have seen his work, everything is being looked at now. And the kind of the philosophy is to run SWAPA kind of like a Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 company, to where we're looking at all the contracts, even insurance that we have to carry. And I personally believe there's a lot of savings to be had there, and we're gonna really streamline the way we do business, whether it's purchase order process or, like I said, different contracts with insurance companies, et cetera. One good news that I have is that on the payroll support program, that we're on the third one now due to COVID. So far, we have not, as a nonprofit, been qualified to apply for a loan. We were told this time around that we were. So we, our staff legal, our external audit firm, started the process of applying for a loan so we can pay payroll, some utilities, and 2 weeks on Monday, I signed the application and submitted it. Within 48 hours, we were approved, and we ended up getting about just north of $901,000 in a loan that we can use to pay payroll. It's about 2.5 months worth of payroll here at SWAPA. Initially, it's in the form of a loan at 1% interest, which we'll never realize because we'll ask for forgiveness as the process goes. And everybody involved believes that that forgiveness will be granted. So it'll be just a grant of $901,000. And the reason I mention that is again, on that deficit budget, and this is going to help kind of offset the nearly $2.4 million that we lost in income due to the VSP and the multiple extra programs. It's a good thing. With the $1.3 million surplus, now we have $900,000 that we can pay some utilities, mostly payroll, with. That's really all I have. There's some other stuff that we're working on with benefits on the background that you'll be briefed on when things finalize. With that, I'll give it back to Amy and take any questions you might have.
Casey, did you have any closing remarks, or are we ready to go forward with some questions?
Well, yeah, I'll just real quick from Mike and Tom's comments, really trying to step up what we provide to our pilots out there, and I think it's important from what Tom said to the fiscal responsibility that we're under using your money, but also I hope it's clear through some of the numbers Tom gave you. We had a deficit budget in 2020. We ended up with about a $1.2 million surplus that went back into the reserve fund. That was due to a lot of fiscal responsibility. And as we move forward, as Tom said, hoping to refine processes, refine how we actually spend money, and how we do CapEx, OpEx, and so really looking forward to really what that's going to look like in a year or two as we get more and more of the processes changed. So that's all I got, and turn it back to you, Amy.
Okay. All right. So we have our first question, and we did get several of these via email, so we're probably going to have a back and forth. Some of them will be ones that you guys put in just so we're aware, and some of them will be ones that we had gotten previously via email. But our first one is, with all the displacements due to ETOPS, wouldn't it have been easier to increase the ETOPS size groups in other bases, or add another West Coast base like Phoenix or Denver to the group?
I'll start on this one and then see if Scott Plyler or Jody Revin want to jump in and add a little bit. But we've been working with the company for the past 3 or 4 months as plans were thrown out there, and then as they slowly solidified. We recognized training issues, hotel issues, and everything that would go on here in Dallas, but then also how was that going to affect the domiciles? SRC has done a great job of trying to get everyone and trying to provide the information, and I think they've done a great job of getting it out there. But whether it's looking at your LANT status, whether it's looking at your domicile status, those projections, I just can't stress enough that during this time of change, everyone use the tools that the SRC provides to make plans and to figure out what is going to work for you best. We offered many solutions to planning to try to mitigate as much as we could. I mean, 152 displacements that we saw is really excessive. The company did take a lot of our suggestions and tried to do what they could, but at the end of the day, their strategic network plans is where they needed to go. Scott, Jody?
Hey, I'll just start until Scott chimes on, because he's going to have the oh yeah. So yeah, to answer the first question is yes, it would have been easier, but it was very much demand based, and the company trying to be very predatory, as Casey put in one of his articles, where the markets and where the tickets sold. As to the interaction with the SRC, what I witnessed was astounding, where Scott was able to point out, hey, you're going to do this, you're going to downgrade this 23,000 number guy, et cetera. And the company took most of his inputs. Scott, I'll let you pick it up there, because you've got the facts.
Well, hey, Scott Plyler on SRC. The highlight of what Casey said was that expanding LAX has been always part of their network plans, and as they expanding ETOPS, that was much delayed because of the max grounding, and then because of COVID, And now you can see that they're starting to really plus that up. They're looking at 37 round trips out to the islands every day come the middle of June. A lot of that is opening up in LA. They're starting nonstops out of LA. And so Los Angeles has always been part of the plans. They've just been delayed in bumping that up. As far as opening up Las Vegas and Phoenix, we still believe that having ETOPS big groups within bases is a little bit problematic, but because our bases are so large, we can't just opening up 2 small EBGs is probably a worst case scenario than opening up 1 EBG in Las Vegas. So, and to be honest, there's more flights going to the islands out of Las Vegas than there are out of Phoenix. Things may change in the future, and LA certainly has more flights than even Las Vegas does, but they're trying to support the California flights from all the different stations. So unfortunately, we don't have control of where they put the aircraft and where they put the flights. And as far as line building and pairing construction, it actually does make more sense to have more pilots in California, Oakland and LAX, and only do a little bit of supplement from Las Vegas at this time. So that's why we had the massive displacements. I know they started out with about 250 in their initial vacancy runs, and they worked that down by massaging some of the numbers in the other bases that were getting downsized and put those into other places. They do take a look at that, but ultimately they need to build the schedule and cover the flights, and that's where we're at right now.
Okay, thank you. So our next question is, with the company announcing flight attendant hiring, have they indicated that pilots will be in the near future, especially since SWAPA has said that we do not have pilots necessary to fly the summer schedule? And also, what was the company's motivation behind opening the flight attendant hiring to California residents?
All right, I'll hit this one. The company keeps us abreast on as the network changes and what their plans are. I think we do see the EXTOs coming back sooner rather than later, the rest of the FOs that are out there. That's going to trigger some upgrade classes. But right now we have kind of a backlog in training, and that's kind of the bottleneck right now is all the EXTO requals as well as ETOPS training, and as well as the normal qualifications that all of us go through. So trying to funnel all of that through training has to be factored into when they would be able to do new hires. And while we are hearing that that is on the horizon, it is still a question as to how fast they can get the required training that they currently have, as well as the upgrades and the things that have to occur to keep us balanced as we move into the fall. They are operating as fast as they can. They had a large percentage of instructors take VSP, and they're trying, and that is a fairly large part of the problem is the check airman and instructor corps, and getting 30 or more instructors hired and up to speed in that process. So, the network plan came about relatively quickly coming out of COVID and coming out of once the vaccination started and travel started up again. So the basic answer is we don't know exactly when hiring is going to occur. I think it will be sooner than later. I would be surprised if we saw it this year.
Thank you, Casey. Our next question is, Southwest has thus far maintained that the vaccine is encouraged but not mandatory. However, they are also asking for self-declaration of your vaccine status and intent, with swag points as being the carrot. What is SWAPA's position on answering or not answering their self-declaration request?
I can take this one. So SWAPA's position, I mean, SWA's position is they definitely want the all their employees to get vaccinated. My thought process of that is I'm pretty sure the CDC is going to extend the 90-day quarantine free period for vaccinated people. And what that will do will save them a ton of money in pulls. So anytime there's close contact, you know, basically the entire crew gets pulled for 10 days. So if they can save money there, they'll save a ton of it. So their position is definitely they want their employees to get vaccinated. Now, the declaration is totally up to you. It's personal choice. If you feel like you want to answer that question, you can, but you are not required to. Like I said in my opening, you know, when the chief pod asks you if you're vaccinated, or the GO, or the self-declaration on SWA Life, it's totally voluntary. So that's personal preference.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, our next one is, I think this one will probably be for Tom. Do we invest our surplus monies?
Yes, it's deposited back in the reserve fund, and it's under the same investment strategy as the rest of the money.
Perfect, thank you. One more question, and I believe this one will probably be for Mike. Will charm school be required of both the individual whose emotions were entangled and the individual for whom the allegations are made against? In other words, will both the captain and the first officer be required to attend charm school, hopefully together?
So the goal of charm school is not to necessarily, you know, every time there's a conflict in the cockpit to make those two guys go to charm school. The charm school is really going to be a last resort. You know, if the pilot is facing discipline, possible termination, our hopes is to intercede there and correct the behavior before it goes down that path of termination. So it's kind of going to be a last resort tool for us to use for the pilots. We hope that you know, the pro standards kind of thing is where the captain, first officer, hopefully will talk to each other and work through their problems, and the pro standards person that you speak with will help facilitate that and encourage you two to talk about whatever problems you had. Now, keep in mind, you know, please just speak up in the cockpit. You know, it's just kind of the approach is all that matters, right? If you're going to be hard and be like, you just screw up that altitude, what are you thinking? Ask, I mean, jerk off, whatever, you know, something mean like that. And believe me, it's happening. That's not going to be taken well by anybody. So the approach is really important, and again, pro standards can help work through the problems if for some reason we're not getting along.
And I would just like to add real quick on that as well, that it's another tool that not only the company, but we have in protecting our pilots as another form of or not another form, but in addition to, and hopefully prevent progressive discipline. So we hope, you know, that if it's participated in, and the company is part of this, that there's going to be a mitigation that occurs in the progressive discipline process. So that is our hope.
Thank you, guys. So we have another one on the vaccine. It says, I heard 2 of the 3 executives speak loudly and clearly in support of vaccine hesitance, reluctance. Can you say that you are equally supportive of those of us who are vaccine enthusiasts?
I can speak for myself. I mean, definitely support of vaccine. I am vaccinated, and I just want to make sure that everybody understands that we think at SWAPA that's a personal choice, and that it shouldn't be mandated upon anybody. So we live in a free country, right? And we just think that should be the way it goes. You know, if you want to get the vaccine, absolutely, all for it. Go ahead and do it. But if you don't, you shouldn't be forced to. So that's my personal take on it, and how SWAPA is looking at it at this point and for the future.
And I'll actually add something a little stronger. I feel that whatever reason that you have for getting a vaccination or not getting a vaccination is a very personal decision based on beliefs based on the facts that you have. And I would say that we are equally as supportive of those who get it. And Mike has fought through those battles, and the 48-hour non-fly and the things that come along with getting vaccinated, as well as providing support for the pilots that want. So I would say we are equally, and that's not just a political statement. It's true. I mean, the freedom of choice is core to who we are and how we will support our pilots.
Okay, thank you. A lot of pilots got displaced in June to fill the LAX needs. I would be willing to go from Denver as a voluntary if paid moving was made available. Has any such incentive been discussed with SAW to lessen the impact on involuntarily displaced pilots?
I'd like to see Jody jump in on this one.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question, Amy?
Of course. A lot of the pilots got displaced in June to fill the LAX's needs, and I would be willing to go from Denver as a voluntary if paid moving was made available. Has any such incentive been discussed with Southwest to lessen the impact on involuntarily displaced pilots?
So not a specific provision outside of our current contract. We have, the SRC has worked to mitigate some of those situations that do fall within the bounds of our contract, and even helped to show the company. But there were paid moves that were available and are available if it triggered, that were triggered from the new domicile language. So it has to do with the personal choice about whether the pilot, is going to move, et cetera. But that is something that each pilot needs to review, because it has been triggered in some cases.
Okay, thank you. Next question is, if you are not on property June 1st of this year and you retire, you're not allowed profit sharing for the final year. This doesn't affect any other work group, as they can choose to retire after June 1st, but pilots are required by law to retire on their 65th birthday. This retired captain suggests that this should be addressed. Thoughts?
Yeah, I'll say that we are quite aware that we are the only group that is affected by that, and those that have provided the service to Southwest Airlines for as many years as a lot of our pilots have, the randomness of when their birthday occurs shouldn't be a penalty when they retire. And so we will work to address it, but it is arbitrary and should be and there shouldn't be a penalty when it comes to retiring.
Thank you, Casey. This next pilot asked, I was wondering if we could please get a one-year look-back summary of which company online training modules, distance learnings, cold weather operations, max RTS, etc., were paid events, and also how much each of them were supposed to pay. Mike, do you want to take this one? Okay.
Yeah. So our training committee, basically they time every DL, and they have the records. So we can certainly ask them to provide you that information, and we can get that number back to you. We don't have that right offhand right now, but we can certainly look into it.
Thank you, Mike. Our next question from a pilot is, the Crew Hub app recently became available for use on your personal device. We still don't have an MOU for the EFB and associated applications. Are we still at an impasse on said MOU, and does SWAPA have a recommendation on installing the Crew Hub app on a personal device?
I would argue we actually don't have an MOU on the new company-owned devices. And our recommendation, has been do so at your own risk. And the fact that we couldn't come to an agreement is concerning, because we're just trying to protect our pilots who who want to have access to as much electronic media as they can, and whether it's with the company provided or SWAPA. And so again, our recommendation is to do so, but understand that we don't have protections, and do so at your own risk.
Okay, next, is the union going to start holding SWAPA family events again?
I hate that I'm the only one answering, but I know they're coming right here. I'm a very strong believer in those events. It goes back to my opening remarks about what we provide and how I want our pilots to use the services that SWAPA provides. SWAPA Family gives us the ability to get in front of the families, and so that if a pilot is on a flight and something happens, the sometimes CEO of the household, if that's the wife, can know that she can call or he can call and get answers if their pilot is unavailable or, in the middle of a 3-hour flight. And that's what we want. And so we would like to get back to those as soon as we can. And I think we will. COVID has put a hit on that, and probably the rest of this year. But we will definitely get back to them. I feel strongly, and want to see them return.
Great, thanks,
Casey,
Casey.
I'll jump in on that real quick. What Casey said, this year, we decided that because the country was shut down, the world was shut down, those events weren't going to be had, and rightfully so. So far, we don't see any conferences, even industry conferences or any of that stuff happening. So we reflected the budget and this year's budget based on that. Come 2022 or even later this year, if strategically there's needs for those events, we'll fund them, we'll have them, and we'll press with them.
Thank you, Tom.
Hey, I want to add one more thing to that real quick, just because I feel strongly about it. We had a wife of a pilot just in the last 2 weeks reach out. He was unavailable on exactly the sort of facts that I just gave. It was in the middle of a flight. Her a parent had passed away, and she didn't know how to approach it or what to do. And she reached out to SWAPA, and that was a direct result of the SWAPA family events. And as she relayed that because of that, she got the number and made the call. And by the time he landed, she was taken care of. He was pulled, and they were on their way to support their family.
Thank you, Casey. So our next question is, ground operations is falling apart, undermanned and overworked, and it's not even the height of the summer travel. To whom or using what SWA reports should we be reporting proper delay codes? I think, Mike, could you answer that one?
So that's a good question. Without having the EFB and the reports that they have established, I'm not positive which reports would work. Personally, I would just call a chief pilot and tell them about the problems, and but I can definitely look into that. I'm just not sure which reports we have to use, so I can look into that and get back to you.
Do any of our SMEs on the call have that information at hand?
So I would just add, Mike is absolutely right. The chief pilot report is an excellent source for that. This is Jody Revan, and then also an IR. You can always file an IR. Hey, this happened. I filed the report. Then I saw this, but I would first try to handle that. You can call back to the station, have the previous ops agent call back to the station and say, hey, look, I put this delay code. I think it was this other thing. Try to handle it just like we do with pro standards. Try to handle it at that level first. Then if you don't, it goes to the next level up, the chief pilot report or the chief pilot phone call, and then an IR as a last result. And there will definitely be other eyes on it if it's an IR than just the chief pilot. So if you want the attention, and make sure you want the attention, then the IR is the way to go.
Thank you, Jody. Our next question is, do we know when Southwest Airlines headquarters is going to be back in the office? And are we expecting monthly negotiating meetings to increase by the summer or fall? I think Kurt Heidemann is one of our SMEs on here. I'm betting he could answer that.
Yeah, hi, it's Kurt. Right now, they are in what's called, I think it's called yellow. They're basically operating at 25% through the end of this month, and then starting in June, they're going to go to 35. At least that was the plan. So they're starting to staff folks, but they're not there yet. We're ready. We have availability in our building at SWAPA to handle it, to have the company come over, but they have so far elected to decline on that. We're going to keep pushing for it, and I think that's really what our membership wants and needs. We get better service for our pilots if we can get in the same room with the negotiators from the other side and get to a deal sooner. So no news yet, but we'll keep pushing.
And we have published a couple of dates, just FYI. They are meeting next week, and then again in June and July, just so you guys are aware. And we will have those dates are on the new swapa.org too. You're certainly welcome to look at those there. And our next question, do we have another question?
We do, Amy, and I was answering the last question, so let me ask this one. The question is going to actually be probably for our negotiating committee. We're going to jump right to them. In the last SWAPA podcast with Eric Schnitzler, it was a very eye-opening report on the Southwest C-Suite 2020 compensation. Does SWAPA have any plans to negotiate equity grants with Southwest in our next contract? Jody, can you answer that?
So absolutely, we look at, definitely look at the compensation around the company, around the industry, and that is something that the company, the stockholders have always enjoyed is equity grants. When the company came to us for concessions, and we indicated we could help the company with some deferrals, that was one of the things that we suggested, some restricted stock units. You saw the issue this year to even some of our management pilots of RSUs, even in the height of COVID, they're still doing that time and time again. However, in our current offer, we don't currently have restricted stock units on the table. Now, the company, it's a negotiation. So we have an amount of equity that we're trying to achieve for our pilots, and we have some ways outside of that do not include those, but we would never be opposed if the company wants to give us ownership in that way. What we have learned in the past, from lessons in the past, is that options are not something that we would be interested in. If we wanted options, we would buy them ourselves. So for now, the answer is no, but not something we would be opposed to.
Thank you, Jody. Our next question says, my check ride got slipped 2 months in a row after monthly bids had closed. The second time scheduling didn't even message or call to tell me. Has this been common? And are we pushing for better notification or procedures?
I'll take that one. This has been an ongoing battle for years. And what is extremely odd is the advisory circular on AQP does not speak to the crew concept. That is what Southwest chose to go with, and it's written into their FOTM, which is approved by the FAA. And then they have the ability through AQP to go to an 18-month cycle. And so we like to call this sort of self-inflicted harm, and our pilots are paying for it. And this discussion of moving pilots up or back, which they both have occurred at times within 12 months of one another. But for, I would say, 4 to 5 years, we have seen the numbers of people that are being moved forward or moved back increase exponentially. There was a time when it was just a handful here or there, and we've seen, I think the highest count was up to 13 pages of pilots being moved. And that's how we get the notification. So it is something that we disagree with and push hard against. But until we have a new contract and something that addresses that, or the company decides to move to a more flexible system that is allowed by both the advisory circular, then we're going to continue to see it.
Thank you, Casey. Our next question is, are there any thoughts on time frame? The last half of the FOs out on Exto may be called back, with the training department being in a bit of a backup.
That's a great question. Scott, do you have any insight there?
Yeah, the most recent update that we have, we're not looking at anything in August for any recalls. That'll probably be reflected in the vacancy that comes out tomorrow. But as far as the recalls, the best we can estimate, they're probably going to need some for a plus up in the flight schedule for the holidays, November, December, and they'll probably wind up having everybody back by March and spring break of next year. But again, as was talked about earlier, there's the training requirements. When we bring people back, it'll put us out of balance unless they do upgrades. So with all the folks, just like the last question, getting pushed in their CQT into August, they're kind of backed up on training until the September, October timeframe at the earliest. So that's the best answer we have right now.
Thanks, Scott. So the next question is from Brian Martin. Is there any downside to revealing to the company that I have received the vaccine, or should we collectively not answer? And I think, Mike, you actually have spoken on this in the past. You want to address this one?
Sure. So the only downside would be that you're not going to get a pull if you have a close contact. So they won't have to pull you for the 10-day quarantine if you happen to have a close contact with another crew member or family member. So that's the only downside. I don't have an opinion about should we collectively not answer. I just think it's a personal choice.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is, I would like some clarity on SWAPA's position on when Southwest decides to mandate the vaccine for employees, and what is the way forward for the union if the vaccine is mandated by Southwest?
Well, I think that we would address it on our legal team would address it if it was mandated to current employees. And I think we would have some major issues with that moving forward. As we've said numerous times during this call, it's a personal choice, and whether you have your belief system or whatever reason you have, then that should be respected. So we would fight that on the legal side, without a doubt.
Thank you, Casey. All right, we have time for probably one more question, and then we're going to probably need to wrap up the call. So our last question is going to be, is FlightOps responding to us better than before? I know we've talked about the reset in several different areas, so I believe that's what they're referring to.
Yeah, and it's we actually have been having regular meetings with Bob Waltz and his team, and we are working much better together than I think we've seen in the past, and for all our complaints that we have mitigated many things that have come across, and FlightOps, the team as a whole, has done a very good job responding. I think everybody needs to understand that whether our relationship is good or bad, on a day-to-day basis, we speak to flight ops multiple times daily as individual pilots, as well as grander things come up, and they are generally addressed and taken care of day to day. But we have seen a much better working relationship. We've seen a much better reaction to input from SWAPA, and we commend them for that. And so there's been a leaning in of both sides. And I think it is, while it's not always seen immediately and there's always frustrations, we are seeing, at least internally, a better working relationship that is leading to a better support for you guys out there on the line.
Okay, thank you, Casey. I think that kind of concludes our questions for today. Do you have any wrap up, or are you ready for us to close out the call?
I have a couple things. I'll let Mike or Tom jump in if they want to say anything in closing. If not, I'll close it out.
Okay.
I would just say, thank you very much for joining the call. It's our first one, and stay tuned. Look for the snapshots where we announce future calls. But we appreciate the questions. My phone number is on the screen, or on the website. Anytime you get a talk, give me a call. I'm available. Any COVID questions or anything else, I'm available for 24/7. So thanks for tuning in.
I'll echo that sentiment as well. Thanks for being on here for an hour and staying engaged. Just really what we can negotiate and advocate and do whatever we want, but without you guys and the membership being engaged, it's not going to go anywhere. So this is really important, and we'll do more of these as the year goes on. And thanks again. And like Mike said, all of our phone numbers are on the website, on the screen here. And I always say our phones are on 24/7. My ringer never goes off, and I know these guys don't either. So give us a call, text, whatever you need. And thanks again.
All right, and then just in closing, real quick, we have a podcast that'll be coming out, and it's Hank and the IAC, and he'll be speaking to sort of our finances and what he's going to be looking at. There'll be a follow-up to that later in the year. And don't forget to visit the new SWAPA.org. It's been redesigned, better usability, and we hope you find that. And it's also available in a mobile version that's a lot more accessible. So please, we're trying to provide everything we can to all of our members, and we appreciate you all taking the time and being here with us. And just stay tuned. We'll keep the communication coming out, especially as negotiations continue. And thanks for being here, and thanks for the support.
And with that, we'll go ahead and this is obviously, as they mentioned earlier, these are the executives and their email addresses, telephone numbers. Those are also located on the website, which, as we mentioned, has just been redesigned. If anybody has any questions, you can also reach the execs at execs@swapa.org. And with that, we will close out the call. Thank you guys for attending.